This young man's name is Du Iltul. He is the son of a gambling legend known as the One Ear. Even though the One Ear had died, his talent in gambling was passed down to his son Iltul. Iltul himself was still a student, but his ability to analyze opponents at the casino table was worthy of praise. Apart from being able to read his enemies' cards, he also could observe their movements, which were said to create a certain rhythm, so that from there he could predict which cards were coming to weaken his opponents with this ability and win the game. This ability and skill got him the nickname Tadza, a professional gambler in Korean. He often gambled at the same gambling house owned by a bearded guy, whom he often gave a share of his winning, but one day, after winning a big money, he met a woman he had never seen before. Feeling sorry for her, he finally accepted the woman's invitation to dinner. Without getting to know Iltul, the woman knew that he was Tadza. Iltul's abilities were already known throughout Korea, but instead of being amazed by him, she asked him to stop gambling because despite the big wins, gambling would eventually end up in a complete loss, leaving an individual with nothing at all. Iltul became curious about who the woman in front of him was. Unfortunately, the woman immediately left because a guy coming from a car forcibly picked her up. As soon as Iltul arrived home, he was surprised by his mother who greeted him inside his apartment room. His mother was the owner of a small food stall on the outskirts of Seoul. That night, the mother made dinner for her child because she knew that soon he would take a civil servant test. She deliberately visited Seoul to see her only son. However, his mother's attitude made him feel guilty instead. He was her mother's only hope for raising the status of their family, especially after his father died without any inheritance. It was natural that the mother wanted her child to get a better job, so to fulfill his mother's wishes, Iltul still went to college as usual, but unfortunately, he couldn't concentrate because his thoughts were only about gambling. It wasn't just gambling that occupied Iltul's mind, but also the mysterious woman who he met yesterday. She disappeared as mysteriously as she appeared, without a trace at all. He even didn't know her name. Those thoughts made him couldn't concentrate while riding a bike when suddenly, a speeding car stopped in front of him at the T-junction and he hit it. The car owner came out to see the dented door of his car and immediately demanded Iltul to pay compensation, and without fear, Iltul was willing to pay it. Iltul's courage made the car owner feel challenged, with an intent to challenge Iltul to a gambling game. Turned out that the owner of the car was one who picked up the mysterious woman he had seen before. This gambling staked on Iltul's broken bicycle and the car owner's dented car door. Whoever lost had to be willing to replace it with a new one, and the mysterious woman who turned out to be named Madonna was the bookie. Iltul thought that this gambling would take place quickly, and he would come out as the winner, but it turned out that the man in front of him was not just any common gambler. Iltul, who had always been thought of as Tatsa, suddenly became helpless because of the man. Iltul got a bad card and lost a lot in his first game. Iltul didn't want to give up, so he borrowed some money from the gambling house owner to continue the game. Even though the man had asked him to stop, Iltul didn't want to listen to that advice because the stakes were increased, namely being able to go on a date with Madonna. Madonna actually asked Iltul to stop too because his enemy wasn't just a usual gambler. But just like the gambling house owner's suggestion earlier, he didn't want to take for granted because he just wanted to win. Unfortunately, Iltul had bad luck that day, and once again, he lost a lot at stake. Finally, Iltul had to face the thugs who immediately beat him until someone managed to find out about the beating and immediately saved Iltul. At first, Iltul thought that EQ was one of the legendary Tazas, but EQ admitted that he was just a fraud. He then explained to Iltul to be more sensitive because in the world of gambling, there was always a way to drain other people's money. One example was Iltul himself, who had unknowingly been made poor by the owner of the gambling house he used to visit. Therefore, EQ asked him to stop gambling, at least for now. This was because Iltul hadn't experienced any further losses, but again, Iltul didn't want to listen. He felt he had enough skill and wanted to prove it in front of EQ. So after that, the two of them went straight to the casino. Iltul proved to EQ that he had what it takes to dominate the world of gambling. It turned out that EQ had been waiting for Iltul's natural skill to show up, because he was secretly forming a team for his project. Apart from Iltul, he has also targeted several people. The first is Kachi, a dealer known for his amazing shuffling card skills. The second is Yang Mei, a casino waiter who often steals customers' betting money secretly and never reports since nobody ever found out about it, while Yang Mei can get a lot of money from it. The third is Mr. Quan, a tavern owner known for his acting skills and often cooperating with bookies. The four people, including Il Tul, were gathered by EQ in an empty warehouse. At first, Kachi felt that this team was useless, especially since they didn't know each other until finally EQ came and explained his plan. It turned out that EQ intended to drain the property of a new Vorish named Mo. He was a cunning landlord who recently started gambling, but to drain all his wealth, it must be done carefully, and this was why the team was formed. Keishi and Yang Mei. I would pretend to be a married couple who wanted to buy a property through Mole, but to provoke Mole's self-esteem, Yang Mei and Kachi had to make Mole feel annoyed so it would be easier for them to drag him to the gambling table. With the same old trick, Yang Mei and Kachi were initially going to lose the game and made it seem like Mole was the winner. But when Mole felt like he was at his best, Kachi and Yang Mei would exchange their cards, which made Mule get bad card, starting Mole's downfall. He who had been arrogant finally swallowed a lot of loss. With the strategy continued, the next day Yang Mei and Kachi went to Mole's office to cancel their plan to buy the property while deliberately saying that Mole was a loser, provoking him so Mole finally wanted to find a great gambler. This was where Il Tul and Mr. Quan took on the role. Mr. Quan would pretend to be a businessman who had a nephew who was good at gambling, and without thinking twice, Mole would then recruit Il Tul to be his partner at the gambling table. Without waiting any longer, the next night, Mole returned to challenge Yang Mei and Kachi. Once again, Yang Mei and Kachi used their old tricks as they both deliberately gave in at the start and made it seem like Mao was the winner, and when he was confident that this time he couldn't possibly lose. While celebrating his winnings, Keishi would open his card that turned out to be worth more than Mole's. Finally, Mole could only bite his fingers as he lost a lot. Later, when Mr. Quan was about to say goodbye to Mole, Mole stopped him and asked him to stay because he still wanted to play. But when Mr. Quan was about to say something, a car showed up and Mole immediately left to greet the person coming from the car who turned out to be Madonna, the woman Il Tul knew and the person that Mole claimed was his boss. Il Tul didn't expect that Madonna was also working with Mel. Il Tul couldn't take his eyes off Madonna. After thinking that Madonna had disappeared, she showed up that day and he was able to meet her again. It turned out that Mal had once owed Madonna for investment reasons. Mule admitted that he would use the money to build a building, even though Mule actually used the money for gambling, while the building promised by Mule was never built because the money had run out without any left. Therefore, Il Tul tried to remind Madonna that Mule was just a fraud. He asked the woman to withdraw all her money from Mule because Il Tul and his friends were draining his wealth, but this information made Madonna feel confused. She didn't understand why Il Tul bothered to tell her, because if Mal was indeed a fraud, only Madonna would be harmed. And from Madonna's question, Il Tul finally realized that he actually liked the woman, which for her, the love didn't mean anything. It turned out that Madonna's arrival was aimed to provoke Il Tul to reveal the secret of Ika's team. Il Tul brought a bag full of money. As for this one, not only betting the money he had his life at stake. Anyone who was lost or proven to have cheated should be executed. That night, when Il Tul intended to rest, suddenly Madonna visited him in his room. He invited Il Tul to work together to trick the devil and win all his money. But this time, Il Tul didn't believe in Madonna anymore. He already had enough of her cheating on him, and he didn't want to fall into the same trap again. But Madonna said that Il Tul didn't need to trust her. He should only believe in the amount of money they could bring home. Finally, Il Tul let Madonna make a strategy with him, because it turned out that he had also collaborated with Mule. Madonna was surprised at first, but this was in the world of gambling. If they were up against a strong player, the other players would work together to defeat him. Il Tul was just using old tricks, but he needed Mal and Madonna to carry out his plan. At first, as usual, it would play with 4 players. They knew that the devil would only try to make Il Tul lose. He also intended to take $2 million belonged to Il Tul, but Il Tul was no less a genius. Before that, he had collaborated with Mole's underling, who held a grudge against his boss because he was always treated badly. In the end, Mole was killed by his own man. The next day, Kachi and Young Mai, who turned out to be married, suddenly got $1 million in their car. Likewise with Miss Juan, who suddenly received the same amount of money sent by an unknown person, but when they saw a card in the bag, they immediately knew that it was Il-Chul. Meanwhile, Il-Chul was starting a new life by living with his mother. And as the only son, he managed to answer his mother's hopes by becoming a civil servant. Il-Chul had stopped gambling and wanted to live a simple and happy life with his mother.